I survived a 15-foot fall off a power pole, and what almost destroyed me wasn't the concrete. It was what my fiancée did 72 hours later. My name's Milo. I'm 32, and I've been a lineman for almost a decade, which means I've seen guys get hurt, seen guys quit, and seen guys lose everything because they thought they were invincible. I was one of those guys until a corroded mounting bracket decided to teach me otherwise. It was a routine job. Early September, replacing a blown fuse on a residential pole about 15 feet up, nothing I hadn't done 1,000 times before. I clipped in, checked my harness, started working the connections, and then I felt it. That sickening shift when metal that's supposed to hold you just doesn't anymore. The bracket snapped, my safety line caught hard, and my shoulder made a sound I'll never forget, like someone stepping on a bag of chips, but way worse. I hit the ground anyway because the shock load was too much, and for a few seconds I just lay there staring at the sky, hearing my own voice repeat the same stupid question over and over. Did we install the fuse? Did we install the fuse? I kept saying it like a broken record, and my crew boss Rick was yelling at me to stay still, but I couldn't even process what was happening. They loaded me into an ambulance, and I remember thinking the whole ride to the hospital that my fiancée Roxy was going to lose her mind when she found out. Roxy and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and up until that fall, I thought we were solid. She worked in social media management for a yoga studio, posted aesthetic photos of green juice and sunset stretches, and always talked about wanting freedom and creativity and not being tied down by a 9-to-5. I respected that. I really did. Even though it meant I was covering rent, utilities, insurance, car payments on the Jeep we co-signed for, groceries, subscriptions, basically everything. I even bought her a new phone a few months back because she said she needed it for content creation, and I figured if it made her happy, it was worth it. She was sweet when things were good, affectionate, always saying she appreciated me. But looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. Her best friend Dorian was one of those cracks. Dorian was 30, ran a bike shop downtown, and had this weird territorial energy like he was always testing how much space he could take up in my life. He had the code to our apartment, would walk in without knocking, sit in my chair, drink my beer, and make these little jokes that weren't really jokes, more like jabs wrapped in humor, so you couldn't call him out without looking sensitive. One time he looked at me while Roxy was in the kitchen and said, "Bro, you're lucky, she even tolerates you," and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I didn't laugh. Roxy did. After the fall, I had surgery to repair my shoulder. They said I tore the labrum and had some nerve damage, and I'd need at least 6 weeks before I could even think about going back to light duty. I woke up in the hospital with Roxy sitting next to me, and she squeezed my good hand and said, "I'll take care of you." And I believed her. The first 2 days home were okay. She brought me water, helped me adjust the sling, even made me soup once. But by day 3, I started noticing things. She was on her phone constantly, ordering food delivery, but only enough for her and one other person. And when I asked who was coming over, she'd get defensive and say, "I'm allowed to have friends, Milo." I wasn't trying to control her. I was just confused why she was treating me like an inconvenience in my own apartment. Then one afternoon, I was lying on the couch, drifting in and out because of the pain meds, and I heard her voice from the bedroom. She was leaving a voice message for her friend Rebecca, and she said, "He's turning into dead weight. I didn't sign up to be a nurse." I felt my stomach drop. Dead weight. That's what I was to her now. Not her fiancé who'd just been seriously injured. Not the guy who'd been paying for her life for 3 years. Just dead weight. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was too out of it and too shocked. But that moment burned itself into my brain. The next evening, Dorian showed up at the apartment with 2 bags of alcohol, some craft IPAs, and a bottle of cheap whiskey. And he walked past me like I wasn't even there and said to Roxy, "You ready to forget your problems tonight?" I was the problem. I was lying there with my arm in a sling, barely able to lift a water bottle, and this guy was talking about me like I was some obstacle to their fun. Roxy didn't correct him. She just laughed and grabbed 2 glasses from the cabinet. They sat in the living room, 6 feet away from me, drinking and talking and laughing, and every once in a while she'd glance over at me like she was checking to see if I was still breathing. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep because I didn't want to deal with whatever this was, but I could hear everything. Dorian was talking about some concert coming up, some indie band playing at a venue downtown, and Roxy was saying how badly she wanted to go, how she needed to get out, how she felt trapped. Trapped. I'd been home from the hospital for less than a week, and she already felt trapped. I wanted to get up and tell them both to get out, but I couldn't move without pain shooting through my entire upper body, so I just lay there, listening, hating every second of it. That night after Dorian finally left, Roxy came over to the couch and asked if I needed anything, and I just looked at her and said no. She shrugged, went to bed, and didn't even say goodnight. I stayed on that couch staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head: the fall, the surgery, the voice message, Dorian's smug face, and I realized something that made my chest feel hollow. I wasn't her partner, I was her safety net, and the second I couldn't perform that role anymore, I became disposable. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of the end, because 3 days later, she was going to make a choice that would destroy everything. And when she did, I was going to make sure she regretted it for the rest of her life. 3 days after Dorian showed up with the whiskey, my sister Haley arrived unannounced, and the second she walked through the door, I knew someone was about to have a very bad day. Haley's 35, works in corporate law, and has this energy that makes people straighten their spines and shut their mouths without her saying a single word. She took one look at me on the couch, one look at Roxy scrolling through her phone in the kitchen, and one look at Dorian sprawled out in my recliner like he owned the place, and her face went completely neutral, which is when you know she's at her most dangerous. She walked over to Dorian, stood directly in front of him, and told him to get off my couch, and it wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact. Dorian tried to laugh it off, did this whole awkward chuckle thing, and said something about just hanging out, but Haley didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him until he got up and mumbled something about needing to go anyway. Roxy came out of the kitchen and immediately put on this performance. Suddenly, she was the concerned fiancée, asking if I needed anything, offering to make coffee, smiling at Haley like they were old friends. Haley smiled back, but I could see it didn't reach her eyes. For the next 3 days, Roxy played the role perfectly. She'd bring me water, adjust my pillow, sit next to me during meals, but the second Haley left the room or went to the store, the mask dropped. She'd go right back to her phone, texting constantly, and I started paying attention to the patterns. Every time I was supposed to be asleep or medicated, she'd move to the bedroom, and I'd hear her voice get quieter, more secretive, and once I caught a glimpse of her screen and saw Dorian's name at the top of the conversation. I didn't say anything, I just filed it away, because I was starting to understand that something way worse than neglect was happening here. On the 4th day after Haley arrived, around 2 in the afternoon, I asked Roxy if she could grab my pain medication from the pharmacy because I was running low and couldn't drive. She looked at me like I'd just asked her to donate a kidney and snapped that she was getting ready, asking why I couldn't do it myself. Getting ready for what? I had no idea, but Haley overheard from the hallway and came into the living room with this look on her face that made my stomach tighten. She asked Roxy what she was getting ready for, and Roxy got immediately defensive, said it was none of her business, said she was allowed to have a life. Then the door opened and Dorian walked in, not with his usual sloppy jeans and hoodie, but dressed like he was going somewhere nice, button-up shirt, clean boots, cologne that I could smell from across the room. Haley looked at him, looked at Roxy, and I watched her piece it together in real time. Roxy grabbed her purse and announced they were getting a hotel downtown, said there was a concert tonight, and they didn't want to drive back late. The room went completely silent. Haley turned to her and said, voice still calm, but with this edge that could cut glass, "So you're leaving him, alone, recovering from surgery, to get a hotel with another man." Roxy's face flushed and she started throwing out every manipulation tactic in the book, said Haley was being controlling, said I was being insecure, said she deserved to have fun after spending days taking care of me, which was rich considering she'd barely done anything. I was just sitting there, watching this play out, and then I noticed something on the side table next to the couch. Her engagement ring. She'd taken it off, left it there like it was a piece of junk mail, and when I pointed at it, she had the audacity to say it didn't match her outfit, like that was a reasonable excuse for abandoning the symbol of our entire relationship. I felt something break inside me, not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet snap like a cable under too much tension finally giving out. I looked at her, looked at Dorian standing there with his hands in his pockets trying to act invisible, and I said the only thing I could manage. Have fun. My voice was flat, emotionless, and I think that scared her more than if I'd yelled. She hesitated for a second, like she was waiting for me to beg or argue, but I just turned my head and stared at the TV. They left, and I heard them laughing in the hallway as the door closed, and that laugh is what sealed it. The second they were gone, Haley pulled out her phone and called our best friend Nate, and when he answered, she didn't even say hello, just told him to get over here because we were doing this tonight. Nate showed up 20 minutes later, took one look at me, asked if she'd finally crossed the line, and I nodded. What happened next was the most surgically precise dismantling of a relationship I've ever witnessed. Haley pulled out her laptop and started making a list. Nate grabbed a notepad, and they turned my living room into a war room. First step, finances. Haley logged into my accounts and started separating everything. Moved money into a new account Roxy didn't have access to, canceled the credit card she used, removed her from my car insurance. Second step, the apartment. Nate called a locksmith, paid extra for same-day service, and by 9 p.m. we had new locks on the door. Third step, the wedding. Haley started calling vendors, told them the wedding was canceled, and because most of the deposits were in my name, she got partial refunds on the venue, the caterer, and the photographer. She was so efficient it was terrifying. While they handled logistics, I sat there feeling this weird mix of relief and rage, because I'd been carrying this woman for 3 years, paying for everything, supporting her dreams, and the second I needed support, she bolted to a hotel with another man. We packed up her stuff, not carelessly but not gently either, boxed up her clothes, her yoga mats, her crystals, all the little things she'd scattered around my apartment like she owned it. Nate found an empty box, grabbed a marker, and wrote on the side in big letters that Dorian could help with this one, and I actually laughed for the first time in days. Around midnight, Haley asked if I was sure about this, if I wanted to maybe sleep on it. And I showed her the ring still sitting on the side table where Roxy had left it. Haley picked it up, looked at it, and put it in a small envelope with a note that said she forgot something. At 1 a.m, my phone buzzed, a text from Roxy with a little heart emoji saying they might stay longer and not to wait up. I showed it to Haley and she smiled, actually smiled, and said that was perfect because Roxy had just put it in writing. Nate cracked open a beer, handed one to Haley, and asked if I wanted one, but I was still on pain meds, so I passed. We sat there in my apartment, surrounded by boxes of her stuff stacked by the door, and I felt lighter than I had in months. I wasn't sad, I wasn't heartbroken, I was just done, and that clarity was the best painkiller I could have asked for. Sunday morning hit like a freight train, not for me, but for Roxy. I was sitting in the kitchen with Haley having coffee when my phone started blowing up, text after text, call after call, all from Roxy. The first message came in around 11 asking why her key wasn't working, then another one 5 minutes later saying her card got declined at the coffee shop, then a voice message where I could hear the panic starting to creep into her voice asking what was going on. I didn't respond to any of it, just put my phone on silent and slid it across the table to Haley, who read through the messages with this satisfied look on her face. Around noon, Roxy showed up at the apartment building and I knew because the front desk called asking if I was expecting anyone. I told them no and to not let her up. She tried buzzing anyway, over and over, and eventually she was in the hallway outside my door and I could hear her out there losing her mind. She was yelling about how this was abusive, how I couldn't just lock her out of her own home. Except it wasn't her home, her name wasn't on the lease, she'd never paid a single month of rent, and legally, she had zero claim to anything. Nate was still there from the night before, and he looked through the peephole and said she was on her phone crying, probably calling someone for backup. Turned out that someone was Dorian, because about 20 minutes later he showed up, and I heard him in the hallway trying to calm her down, telling her they'd figure it out, but his voice had this edge to it like he really didn't want to be there. She asked him if she could stay at his place while she sorted this out, and there was this long pause, the kind of pause that says everything. And then he said something about his roommate not being cool with it, and how he had to get to work. Just like that, he bailed, left her sitting in the hallway, and I heard his footsteps getting quieter as he walked away. The next few days were chaos for her. I know because mutual friends started reaching out asking what happened, and apparently Roxy was telling everyone I'd snapped and kicked her out for no reason. Her friend Rebecca, the one she'd been talking to on that voice message, apparently heard the full story and went radio silent on Roxy, which told me everything I needed to know about how believable her version was. The wedding vendors started reaching out to her too, confirming cancellations, and she tried calling a few of them back asking if they could reverse it, but they told her the person who paid the deposits had canceled, so there was nothing to reverse. She posted something vague on social media about betrayal and learning who people really are, and I didn't respond, didn't engage, just let her spiral while I focused on getting my life back. My shoulder was healing slower than I wanted, but I was getting mobility back, and Rick called to say they had light-duty work available in dispatch if I wanted it. Answering calls, coordinating crews, nothing physical, but enough to make me feel useful again. I took it, started going in a few hours a day, and it felt good to be around the guys again, to have a purpose beyond just sitting on my couch replaying the worst week of my life. I started looking at houses, Nothing fancy, but something with a garage where I could set up a workshop, maybe do some side work fixing equipment or small engines. Things I could do even with my shoulder not at full strength. By the end of October, I'd found a place, a small 2-bedroom about 20 minutes outside the city with a decent-sized garage and a yard, and I put an offer in that got accepted. Moving out of the apartment felt like shedding dead skin, boxing up my stuff, leaving behind all the memories of Roxy and Dorian and that whole toxic situation. Haley helped me move, Nate helped me move, and by mid-November, I was in my own house, my own space, with new locks that only I had keys to. I started sleeping better, eating better, even started going to physical therapy consistently because I actually had the mental energy to care about my recovery. Around the 3-month mark, mid-December, I was in my garage working on an old lawnmower engine when I heard a car pull up in my driveway. I walked out and saw Roxy sitting in a beat-up sedan I didn't recognize, and when she got out I barely recognized her either. She'd lost weight, looked exhausted, had this defeated energy that was so different from the confident woman who'd walked out of my apartment with Dorian 3 months ago. She asked if we could talk, and I didn't let her inside. Just stood there on the porch with my arms crossed waiting to hear whatever she came to say. She started with an apology, said she'd made a huge mistake, said she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. All the standard lines people say when they torch their life and want someone else to put out the fire. Then she dropped the bomb. She told me she was pregnant, and before I could even process that, she added that it was Dorian's. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no jealousy, no satisfaction, just this cold, empty feeling like I was watching a stranger tell me about their problems. I asked her why she was telling me this, and she said Dorian had ghosted her completely, wouldn't answer her calls or texts, and she had nowhere else to go. Her parents were helping, but they were furious with her. She was working 2 jobs trying to save money, and she looked at me with these desperate eyes and said, "You're a good man. You could still be the father. We could still be a family." I actually laughed, couldn't help it, because the audacity of that statement was so insane it looped back around to being funny. Nate chose that exact moment to pull up with some materials I'd asked him to grab from the hardware store. And when he got out of his truck and saw Roxy standing there, he said, "Oh my God, she's speedrunning bad decisions," which made me laugh even harder. I looked at Roxy and told her to call her soulmate, the guy she chose over me when I couldn't even lift my own arm, and said she could lift her own consequences now too. She started crying, said I was cruel, said she never thought I'd be this cold. But I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. I told her I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped funding the fantasy. And if she wanted help, she should try tracking down Dorian since he seemed so eager to play house 3 months ago. She stood there for another minute like she was waiting for me to crack, to feel sorry for her. But I just turned around and walked back into my garage. I heard her car start, heard her drive away, and I went back to fixing the lawnmower engine like nothing had happened. Nate came in, handed me a coffee, and asked if I was okay, and honestly, I was better than okay. 6 months ago, I thought losing Roxy would destroy me, but standing in my own garage, in my own house, with friends who actually showed up when things got hard, I realized I hadn't lost anything worth keeping. She chose a hotel room with another man over caring for me after I nearly broke my back keeping us afloat. And now she wanted me to raise another man's kid because her plan blew up in her face. Some people don't deserve second chances. They deserve to live with their choices. And Roxy was learning that lesson the hard way. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.